Good morning. So today what we're doing is we're looking at this. We've got some beautiful pictures of a dilapidated old farmhouse. It's got some dry stack stone in there, has some plaster over some parts, and it's got these beautiful, wooden windows and the door jamb and all that kind of stuff. And so what we're going to do is we're going to carve and create this stone wall. That's our primary focus, but I think also adding in some of those elements, the wooden door, the window sashes, stuff like that, and aged wood are going to bring a really nice contrast to it. So that's what we're going to do today, and I'll step you through it the entire way. I just got a regular piece of foam here. This is the 1-inch foam. And I'm going to concentrate on the front, not doing the back, but I will do the sides. So the first thing I want to do is I want to lay out where a door is going to be. And even if it's kind of dilapidated or something like that, I want to start off with a straight line, and then I can modify it from there. And like our picture reference, there is a board going all the way across there, and then that is over the doorway, and it's over also a window. So we're going to kind of come partial with the window. The window is going to stick out here. I'll have a full window, but it won't have rock all over it. So I want to figure out exactly where my window is going to go. So same deal. And like our picture, it's pretty much right next to the door. So I'm going to do the same. I think that's a fine way to do it. It's a big old picture window. Now we just start drawing. I think it's important to go ahead and get the big elements in first. And I'm just using a regular pencil here, and I'm not going to draw to pierce the material. I'm just drawing literally the rock. So I just want to be very careful. I'm not piercing down into the foam. And the reason is, if you use your pencil to pierce down the foam, it can snag and grab. So let's look at this. Here's another piece of foam I have here. If I do this, sometimes see what it does? It snags and it kind of grabs and stuff like that. I don't want that. So what I prefer to do is, once I've got it drawn in, I'll come back. Let's say here's what I'm drawing. And then I like to come back and just pierce the top very lightly with my blade here. And that can help the pencil go through and not grab. See that? It's pulling the sides of it in, and that's what I want. So that's kind of the look I'm going to be going for. So, and these are also, as you can see in the picture, they're very jagged. So we're going to just kind of continue with that. Okay, now I want to go through here. Now I'll deepen them, pressing in to make those gaps good size. I don't worry about messing with the rock, because I'm going to come back and kind of mess with the rock more. I'm going to pull out some of these little shards in here and all kinds of stuff. And typically I wouldn't go this deep unless I was going to put like a, like some caulking or some filler or something in there. But this being a dry stack, I want to create gaps. So I'll be pushing some of this deep into to try to lose it like this. So I'm just pushing down. Some of those I'll actually physically remove. Now, that looks pretty good, but they're awfully smooth. So now we texture them. I like to use these steel bristle brushes because look what you can do here. So I'm going in, and that's still going to give the face a lot of character, but it's also going to open it up with a bunch of like not pinholes, but like a really super aggregate kind of texture, which is when you look on these in the picture, if you zoom into these guys, they've got a really rough texture. So now that I've got some of that on there, now I can come in, actually I don't want to use that now, I am going to get my rock, and you can kind of go in like that, you know, and get some neat effects. The other thing is just this bumpy surface, you know, is just fantastic for just going like this, you know, just getting some variation in depth, some variation in surface, all that kind of stuff. Now, I haven't lost any of my detail. I'm still going to need to pick that out, but this is varying the entire surface. And we'll do a bunch of this because that's the thing with a wall like this. I really want to take my time and pick out these individual rocks. Like this stuff here, it's all cracked. I'm going to push that back in, make that not a part of it, and then I can, you know, bring that surface over. Meaning I'm kind of rounding the surface a little bit. So I'm pushing these guys back in, getting some great relief between the rocks. And then you see here, I've got a sharp corner. That's where this sharp edge here, I can go right in there and kind of round that corner over so it doesn't leave too sharp of an edge. Now, in some of these, I'm taking stuff out. I want to physically remove it. And if I don't, they look like rocks, so that's fine. And there would be rock in between these larger stones to kind of, you know, make them fit properly. But that's just one way of texturing. Don't worry about overdoing it here. It's kind of hard to do, though you still want to keep your designs, you still want to keep the rock surfaces and stuff like that. You don't want to lose any of that. But when I come back now, I've got all those things in there. I can come back with my pencil now and bring those details out. And there's a lot more texture in there now because of the rock. Now, if you want a little different tool, and this one I like, it's kind of fun, is a very nice round end tool, and that does a great job of coming in here and defining things too. Being round, it's going to go in those little areas. Here, this got a flat tip. It's rubber. Go right in between there and push in these areas between the rock. And that's going to look real good. I'm going to paint this with a combination of black and burnt umber to get shadows in there and to coat it. So I'm just going to put some of that on there first. And then this is black and burnt umber, a little bit heavier on the burnt umber side of things because I like that nice brown kind of deep look. When I'm putting this in here, it's really important that I want to be pressing into, I want to get all this paint and Mod Podge down into those gaps that I created. You don't want too much water. You want a good buildup of that paint and Mod Podge. So just take your time, just kind of work it in there. Okay, so now we're going to do dry brushing, and this is the real big issue with having it dry overnight. If I don't let this thing completely dry, then as I start dry brushing, then I'm going to be, you know, losing the shadows, the hard edge between the shadow and the top paint that I'm putting on, you know, this yellow ochre. That needs to go on dry. Then I come back with deck tan because I want 2 tones in this and go right over the top. That gives me this great base to start really doing some color changes. Now at this stage, as I'm adding color, they're washes. They're really, really thinned down. And you want to watch this because as these go on, see how dark they look? And that's why a lot of this is sped up, so you can see what time does to it. Over time, those colors will dull. See now they're not as bright? So as they dry, they're not completely dry yet, but I'm using a little bit of white here and I'm spackling that. I'm using a toothbrush to flick paint over it and it brings these little dots in there. It's not 100% dry, so I come back and I'm using some light rust, same technique. And what this does is this gives this variation and these little pops, these little bullets of color in the wall. So now I'm coming back with a little different color. I'm using my washes again, highlighting areas, even sometimes on the same stone because I want to get that shading appeal. So darker on the bottom and lighter on the top. Well, that's not looking too awfully bad. I am pretty happy with how that's coming out. I think a little bit more ochre, and then I'm going to start doing some highlights and some low lighting, some shadows. Okay, so here is where I'm starting with shadows, and I'm concentrating not just on the bottom of the larger rocks, but even looking at a broader aspect of the whole thing. You know, I want to bring shadows into the whole wall. They're like, you know, the upper part of the wall could be hanging over the lower part of the wall. So I'm thinking those terms. And it's just as simple as dark colors on the bottom, light colors on the top. And I go very extreme by using black on the bottom as a shadow agent, and then using white on the top as a highlight agent. This is where, while I'm painting, I'm adding a little bit of water, and you'll notice after I do some higher highlights with this white, I'll come back in and I'll just dip with water and I'll blend that water in so it fades from the top to the middle of the stone that I'm working on. And then that dark color fades up from the bottom to the middle of the stone that I'm working on. And it gives it a really nice highlighted look. Okay, so that is a nice, colorful, dry stacked wall. And I'm going to let it dry a little bit, and then we'll come back and give it a little bit more detail after it dries out. But I don't think that's looking too awfully bad. Okay, so this is kind of the last part before we start aging, and that is adding, these wood elements. Now, we're not going to do that today. We need to get through our rocks and all that kind of stuff. But I just want to see where this is going. So I've done all my rocks. They're all pretty much the same process, though at this point, I like to look at everything together and notice the differences, because there are differences. There are differences in the paint tones and stuff like that. I leave that to the very end so that everything is, put together, and then I can level out my paints with weathering. So we're going to do wood next, and then we'll do weathering, will be the last part, and we'll finish.